Hi, and welcome to You've Got This podcast with Kat and Von. We're two qualified mental health professionals passionate about supporting expats in Dubai. No matter if you've just arrived or you've been here for years, whether you're single, married, or a parent, we understand the unique challenges of expat life. Our podcast will help you navigate these challenges by offering real, relatable conversations about mental health and well-being. Sometimes funny, but always real. We'll share tips, expert insights, and personal stories to remind you what you're experiencing isn't a sign of weakness. It's a part of being human, and you've got this. Let's dive into today's topic. Welcome back, Von.
Welcome back, Kat.
How are you feeling?
Good.
I'm excited. I'm always excited.
You are always excited. I was actually going to start with, I'm a little bit tired, but then you...
Sorry, got it first. I'm excited because we've got a really interesting topic today and something that hopefully we can all relate to. And before we get really started today, I just wanted to also say to our listeners and viewers that whilst we are, having a focus, obviously, for expat experience, and that will always be filtered into the content that we're presenting, this is not to say that we are not interested in everybody's well-being and everybody's mental health, and it is not to say that obviously, we're talking about a human experience, so this is something that is universal. It's not just true of expats. Some of the examples we lean on are going to be influenced with that lens because we are both, very happy expats living in Dubai. So I did want to just sort of not put that as a disclaimer, but did want to sort of add that at the start of our podcast today, especially because this topic, I work with a lot of different clients from many, many different nationalities, people of all ages. And this is something that I can see so clearly when you meet someone else, okay? So clearly when I'm working with a client, young, old, whatever, but less obvious to see in yourself. And so today's topic is all about our own personal narratives, the narrative that sort of, it guides our lives, whether we're intending it to or not. So the more conscious we are of the narratives we're telling, the stories we're telling, the more we can try to influence these to make it a story that we want to experience.
So this is essentially the story that we tell ourselves.
This is the type of story you are telling every minute of every day without fail. Okay, this is the story that, who I am, what it means to be in my life, what is wanted, what is unwanted, what's working, what's not working. So these narratives unconsciously filter and sort of...
they're like our core beliefs.
They are our core beliefs.
Yeah.
But what's even more interesting about core beliefs is a person does not even know that they're beliefs because to that person, they're truths.
Yes.
So when we say to someone, what are your core beliefs? If you ask me, what are my core beliefs? I'm like, I don't know.
No.
But if you were to look inside my brain, you would see that it's what I hold to be true. Okay. So it's really interesting to deconstruct this, to think about what stories am I telling? And I want to give an example of this. So a couple of years ago, I'll use myself as the example. A couple of years ago, I was in a certain workplace and I'd been there many, many years and I was, fortunate enough to have a lot of, great positions, work with amazing people. But over time, things became more difficult, more challenging for a variety of reasons, okay, both internal and external. And I realized, the level of discomfort I felt at that time was directly related to the type of story that I was telling every time I had to go to work. And it was a very,
So what were some of the narratives?
A very negative story.
Yeah, like what?
I feel trapped.
Yep.
My husband isn't working at the moment.
Yep.
This is on me to make the ends meet. This is on me. I'm pregnant. I've got another child. This is essential. And, in addition to, there's so much pressure, the workday is so long, I don't feel supported, and, and you can imagine the story continues. So this was a story that whether it was true or not is irrelevant because it was true to me at that time. And no wonder I felt terrible, right? Like there is no other alternative. If that is my daily narrative,
Your thought pattern.
my thought pattern, the lens in which I view everything, the sunglasses that I have on that are seeing everything permeated by this story that I'm inflicting on myself. You know, this is something that you want to be aware of. Okay. And I used to catch myself complaining and whinging and getting other people to agree with my narrative.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Convincing.
Convincing them, nope, this is terrible and this is, you know, uncomfortable and this is not fair and. When really that was only exacerbating the problem.
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, it's easy for me to see that now in retrospect when I could let go of that story and that wasn't the sunglasses I had on. But you know, if you are uncomfortable right now and you are, you know, relating to what I'm saying here, really check the story that you are telling yourself every single day.
And the words, the statements that you're using as well. I think the linguistics of a story has so much to say as well on how you present, especially a problem, you know, how I talk about a problem. So let me know if...
That's
it's like, you know, global statements. I'm never going to change.
Yeah.
This is always going to be the way.
Yeah.
Like those linguistic markers, once you start saying
deconstructing them. Yeah.
And that's your story, you start believing that.
Yeah.
And when you start believing that, you start acting like it. It's the behavior that follows.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And what you're saying there is important because, you know, when we talk about this a lot with like teenagers and so on, and we talk about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And very simply, obviously with the growth mindset, it's the idea that, you know, things aren't fixed, you know, intelligence and, you know, if a feeling is not a fixed state. It's transient, it can change, it can improve and so on. When we think fixed mindset, I am always going to be like this. I'm always going to struggle with money. I'm always going to be the one without a partner. You know, you don't have to be rocket science to realize that that's not
and
serving
sometimes
you.
It's just from experiences that you've had in the past. You use them as your evidence, you know, and just because that's happened once, I always date the wrong person.
Yeah.
Okay. What? Because you've had a couple bad dates, but there are how many million women and men out there that you could choose from? You know, maybe it's not.
Yeah. Think of that statistically. You've gone on you've had two like not ideal partners. So therefore, you know, I'm just not made for love. Yep.
I hear that one all the time.
I remember, you know, I had two in my early 20s, you know, not great relationships as you do in your 20s, whatever. And I would be crying to my best friend. I'm like, every person's going to cheat on me. And, you know, this story. And she goes, Kat, two's not a pattern.
Yes.
I love that.
Love
Two's not a pattern.
She's great because it's true.
It's true.
Who's everyone?
I know, everyone.
Yeah,
everyone.
But it's that global statement that feeds into your problem space that tells your story. And I think like it's important for also the viewers to understand, you know, maybe we can nut that out, how our core beliefs formed. And you know, my definition is that, you know, we have core beliefs through our growing up with peers, what our parents and grandparents and relatives thought was the right way to go about certain things. We learned from them. Teachers, coaches, that's where essentially well-intentioned, absolutely.
Yep.
Experiences as well, our core beliefs, that's how they're formed. And they're changeable, right?
You nailed it. Big dramatic pause. They're changeable.
Yep.
They're malleable.
Yep.
They once you shed light on them, if you choose to keep believing that, it's brilliant. If it's serving you, that's great. But they are also just beliefs.
Yes.
To me, the simplest definition of a belief is a thought that you keep thinking that you deem to be true. And, you know, I always use this example with clients, like 100 years ago, maybe 200 years ago, I don't know.
Yeah.
They believed that the earth was flat.
Yes.
Okay. They believed that the earth was flat. It was in textbooks. It was, you know, this was common knowledge. Imagine 100 years from now, the things that we've accepted as truths or the way things are that will also fall apart. You know, it really is a lot more malleable than the world. Like the world, our ideas, you know, what we hold true in ourselves and what society says is true is so malleable and less solid than you could ever imagine, you know, and with that lies a lot of freedom. You know, people hold on to their beliefs and their thoughts like they're truths. And if it's serving you, we keep coming back to that. But if it's serving you well, good, keep thinking that. You know, keep running with that. But if it is something that is causing you discomfort and you're upset and you're unhappy, then look, self-reflect. Yeah. We always talk about, you know, analyze, self-awareness, you know, have some distance. Yeah. Have some distance from your own thoughts. Find the evidence. Have a conversation with a mental health professional, you know. See, do you still want to believe that?
Yeah, or even write them down.
Yeah.
Writing those thoughts down that, you know, you used to currently hold a certain belief system to you is so important, so you can see them with your own eyes. I think that's something that's...
And I think, you know, you and I talk a lot about and one of the episodes that we're going to do on this is on self-awareness. And self-awareness is just an understanding of the self that is a little bit sort of detached from the thinking mind. It's a step back, and it's not accepting every thought that crosses your mind as fact and truth. Okay,
because there's so many passing thoughts. Yeah. I mean, how many thoughts?
70,000,
like a minute,
thoughts a day. For me, a minute. So 70,000 they say, but obviously, and this is key, and this is so key. So 10 years ago, it was estimated to be 50,000 thoughts. Now they're saying 60,000 thoughts. And obviously the number varies, and they can't prove exactly. But a significant amount of thoughts a day. But what is more interesting than the number of thoughts is the amount of thoughts that we actually dismiss as insignificant. If we were to pay attention to 70,000 thoughts, we would have a mental breakdown, because you cannot process that amount of information. So the very fact that your brain just can dismiss a thought is key to you knowing that is a potential for any thought that crosses your head.
Well, that is you can do that. That's your resource. You know you can dismiss a thought. The hard work is which thoughts to listen to.
There you are. Yes.
And which thoughts to pay attention to. And it's a little bit like a radio dial. You know, you can't listen to hip hop at the same time as classical music, at the same time as so which one of those thoughts is going to be helpful to you and grow you, you know, for possibilities and opportunities. So it's also about switching down that dial on some of those unhelpful thoughts. And it's also a very therapeutic coping mechanism that I use with clients in clinical hypnotherapy. You know, putting them in a space where you can sort of think about, okay, well, have a think about what kind of thoughts you're thinking about, and visualize a radio station and how you cannot possibly listen to all that and all that chatter, but you can listen to a few, and which few do you want to listen to?
I like that.
You know, it's just a coping mechanisms, and there's so many things that we can do. Like, what are some other ways of rewriting?
So this is the point, right? And this is what we want our listeners to consider. So once you become aware of your own narrative, and narratives change naturally, okay? They evolve, they change, they serve you in one example, and then, you know, they change for another example. And as an expat, like this is playing out as you made the decision to change from one person who was living in one place, maybe, you know, where you'd always grown up. Your story then changed at that point to become the type of person that picks up everything, relocates, and starts afresh, you know, with all the beautiful and difficult things that are associated with that. So that narrative evolved. Now, if you are in a narrative that is working, you know, this works both ways. You can have a narrative that is not serving you, like my example at work, or you can retell a narrative that pushes you and allows your brain to filter what, like you're saying, change the station. What do you want? What information is going to be filtered into this new narrative that is going to get you to where you want to go. And we are not talking about, I don't want like a fantasy.
No. It's just looking at something a different way. It's about perspective.
Yeah.
Is it not? Just putting on a different set of sunglasses and going, okay, let me look at this another way.
Yes.
How can I look at this? Maybe it's a negative, unhelpful. Give me an example. I don't know. Sorry.
That's all right. We're saying like a story that isn't serving.
Yeah, something that's
I'll
not
give
helpful.
you a perfect example. Sorry, my poor toddler. Like, okay, I'm gonna pretend I'm just changing around the kids.
But we're all living
I
the
have
same
a story.
life.
I have a story. I had a story with one of my children that was like, he's so difficult. I find him so hard to handle. I've met my match in him. Like, this was the kind of narrative I was telling the poor kid. Everyone else that meets him is like, oh my gosh, he's gorgeous. He's adorable. But my story was really problematic.
That's a great example.
Yeah, a very one close to my heart and very difficult for me to admit, actually, that story was running and running and running, because what's that going to do to the connection with my child?
You're so true. This is the same. Actually, I do have an example.
Go for it.
When I watch my kids fight and I'm like, oh, you are always like this and you're always like this. And I never pay attention to the times that they don't fight. And then when they're actually kind to each other, it's always the negative bits.
Negativity bias.
Right?
Yeah.
We always, it's like we always go for the bad story.
Now, this is a psychological term, okay? Negativity bias is the propensity of our brains to sort of focus on threat, okay? We're sort of wired that way, unfortunately. But you can
we do that because our brain is constantly trying to
filter.
Protect
it's trying to protect you. It's well intended, but we run into trouble when we're using it against ourselves, when we're using it against our kids and our relationship with our kids. I find myself saying I need to make up like pretend names to my kids, but Xander, you're never listening. He does. He listens so much, but like I'm just saying this big statement, like it's just outrageous. Like, so these are all the little and big ways that we tell stories, and these can either work to get us to where we want to go, move us and propel us in the direction of our dreams and our goals, or they can work against us and make us really uncomfortable where we are. But watch the stories we tell ourselves and watch the stories you are telling others.
That is such an important point, because what happens is you not only are you telling yourself that quietly in your own head, so you're doing the opposite of being a cheerleader, you're then speaking out loud, so then it's out in the open to somebody else, and you essentially then are going into a conversation with somebody else about your story. So it's just the full 360. It's in your head, and then you're talking about it.
You're bringing it to life.
And it causes a lot of anxiety and, a lot of sort of stress type disorders, and it's not healthy. And like I think we've used a few mechanisms to be able to change that, and we have in our other podcasts as well. And it's so important because it limits you. It limits your possibilities, and like we keep saying, your opportunities to grow and change, and that is what well-being is about.
And if we're to give our listeners like a process, and I want to conclude on this, which is the first thing, is increasing your self-awareness. So awareness is key. Once you realize you are viewing it in a different way anyway, okay? It's like if you do nothing else, to become aware is a gift, okay? And then you want to consider, is this a point in my life where I need to rewrite this story? And this is a technique, in narrative therapy and many other therapies, they use this, where you will sit down with pen and paper and you will re-script a version of your life or a version of events that you want to live by. And the key to this is, like I said, I guess with manifestation, they talk about dreaming big, and that's not really what we're getting at here. This is a version of events or a version of yourself and your story that is true and you believe it to be possible, but it's a more empowering version. Same characters, same, workplace, etc., but a version of it that is more empowering, uplifting, and a positive interpretation. If you are stuck in a job that you are not enjoying, maybe it's, changing it to something more comforting, like this is temporary, and I, look forward to the next challenge, and I'm open to new opportunities and networking and.
Or what can I do about it?
Or that.
If I'm really not happy, how long? What's my time limit?
Yeah.
Set yourself some goals. Look at it differently. So you feel like you have an action plan as well, and it's on a piece of paper. So you can tell yourself, yes, it's okay, I've got this under control, versus, oh, I hate and I don't and I can't and I'm sit and I always and
Exactly right. Exactly right. So, where has this played out in your own lives? Please tell us what narratives are serving you. What sort of unhelpful stories have you been telling, and what's working for you? We would love to hear, and we look forward to connecting in our next podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This has been another episode of the You've Got This with Kat and Von podcast. For more information, visit our website at you'vegottthis.ae, where you can find the show notes and many resources to help support you in your well-being. Or follow us at you'vegottthis.ae. We welcome your comments and questions, so please reach out and be part of the conversation. If you want to support our podcast, please share it with people who might benefit from it. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to join us again. And remember, you've got this.